Couple months since we started trying to get this thing scheduled, and I really appreciate you taking the time, especially during this like crazy holiday season, to come on and talk with me for an hour, right?
Yeah, it's been yeah, like you said, we were talking before the recording button hit just how crazy it was in December and like it's hard to schedule time off, but I'm glad we could get it going for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jason, for those that don't know, right? Maybe they've been living under a rock or something. Why don't you tell people how you got started in cybersecurity? Maybe what was that first experience like that kind of, tickled your brain, so to speak, in a way that was like, oh, maybe I should go down this route.
Yeah. So I mean, like I was always a computer kid, right? Video games, computers. I remember when I was a kid going to we had like a book exchange at school where you could like take a book that you have from home and exchange it for a book that other people brought. And I think one of the books that really like one of the books that I traded for was actually like an MS DOS, it was like a thick, chonky book, like it was huge. And so like I had a computer at a very young age. My dad he recognized right away that like personal computers were going to be like a thing. And so I learned DOS at a pretty young age, and so I was hacking games and stuff like that. With very simple like text editing, hex editing, and then memory editing at a pretty early age. But I kind of fell out of it. I didn't think that there was a career in that. And then in my early 20s, in my well, actually, when I was 20, um, a whole bunch of my friends were older than me, and so they were all going to the bars already to go out and drink and stuff like that. And so, I asked one of my buddies, I was like, "Hey, do you know anybody who could get me a fake ID?" And he was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I can get you a fake ID." And so, back then it was a prohibitive amount of money for a college student, right? It was like 150 bucks for a fake ID or something like that. And so it took forever to get it, and then I finally got it, and it was crap. It was like the worst fake ID I'd ever seen. As someone who didn't know IDs, it was even bad. And so I tried to use it and got immediately like kicked out at like a bar, like that we normally went to, and or then no, we weren't really went to, but they normally went to. And so I got really mad, and this is a reoccurring thing in my life, is like if like like I kind of get like hate inspired a little bit. I don't know what that means really, but like, like if I kind of get it in my head that I could probably do this, like I could make a fake ID. I just have to learn how to do it and like figure it out. I'm a computer guy. So back then there wasn't Tor yet, and so there was really just a set of forums. Carter's Market was one of the biggest ones, and then Shadow Crew was another one. Um, and so I started going to the forums and learning about making fake IDs, and so I purchased the equipment and started building them and got really good at it actually. I never really like sold any, and I just thought it was like a cool thing to be doing, young and impressionable or whatever. And so at some point, basically, I was learning, and then Shadow Crew, the forum I was on, got taken down by the Secret Service in like a multinational, like one of the first really big cybercrime raids.
Hmm.
Now, the guys I knew on there were all Carters, and there's this triad of kind of the underground, and that even still exists today. There are the people who make fake credit cards, and then there are people who make fake IDs so that you can cash out with the credit cards, and then the hackers who hack the credit card numbers so that you can have a whole bunch of credit card numbers to put on fake credit cards. And that was the triad back then. It works a little bit differently today with like chip and pin and stuff like that, but the underground does kind of revolve around these supply chains. And so I knew a lot of the hackers then, and it was back in the early days of web hacking from those forums, and they were like teaching me about like SQL injection and cross-site request forgery, cross-site scripting, like all of these bugs when they were brand new in the web hacking space. And LFIs and SQL injection were obviously the biggest ones. They were like, like those are the ones that could get you like RCE basically. And so I learned a little bit there, and then the forum got raided, and then I didn't know what I was going to do, and so I took this elective at my city college that was called Ethical Hacking and Network Defense, and I was kind of in an IT job at that, but I was very low level, right? It was like running cable, fixing printers, reimaging laptops, stuff like that. I was working an IT job, and so when my instructor started teaching the course, it was already outdated. Like it was super old and outdated. And I was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of like SQL injection and local file includes and like all these things?" And he's like, "No, not really." Like, and so he pulled me aside because he asked me to like show one of those vulnerabilities. And I was like, "Okay, like I can show you. There's this awesome thing called like Hack Me Bank that I'll show you on back in the day." And so I stood it up, I showed the class, and he's like, "Hey, you know that there's a career called penetration testing that people do this and you can do it legally. You can like hack things and you can get paid for it." And I was like, I had no idea that was a thing. Um, and so ever since then, I have just been obsessed with offensive security, all forms of it, almost all forms of it. And so I left my IT job. Um, well, it's not quite true. At the place I was at, where I was like low level IT person, I would go bother the security people, and I'd be like, "Hey, we have cross site scripting here," and they're like, "What is cross site scripting?" And then I'd explain it to them, and I'd be like, "Hey, we have SQL injection here, or we have like a indirect object reference or something." And so I just was this kid who kept bugging them about security stuff when they were security people and they didn't know anything about web security. They knew a lot about network security and architectural kind of like planning for security, but no web security. And so then eventually I got moved into the security group, and then with like a little bit of time there, I left to go to my first consultancy, and that was a penetration testing consultancy in Southern California. And so we did a bunch of banks and stuff like that. Stayed there for a while. Went to HP, did was their lead tester for a while. Worked with Daniel Miessler and a whole bunch of other really talented people at HP. And HP had all those really great printer contracts, like the printer money. And then they would be like, "Hey, we can do your security assessments too." And companies, Fortune 100 companies would be like, "Yeah, sure, whatever. Like, just throw it on the bill." And so we would go into Fortune 100 companies and do pen tests and assessments and stuff like that. And then, yeah, and that's how I kind of got into the pen testing world. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah,
That's fascinating. What when you were doing that city college course,
yeah.
what year was it? And I
Oh,
ask because like it's such a difference in availability of
yeah.
that knowledge now, you know?
2003, 2004, somewhere there. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy because like I've been in the field, since like I don't know, 2014, 2015, right? So
Mhm.
like everything was pretty widely available. Like there wasn't anything that I had to like search too hard for. I just needed to know how to search for it,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Um
There wasn't
I mean
much
like
back then,
yeah,
honestly.
like
It
there was a
was
books on this
yeah.
topic, you know?
There were a few books. One of the books that inspired me a lot was Ed Scotus's Counter Hack and Counter Hack Reloaded. Um, those talked a lot about network pen testing and network security, which I didn't have any exposure to yet, and I had to get really fast because a lot of the contracts that my pen testing company had were internals, and so had to learn that pretty quick. Um, but even then, there was always this thing, and it continues to this day. It's just there's more access to content creators and like trainers these days. But like there's a difference between what you learn at a point in time than being on the cutting edge, right? And even then, it was like, okay, internals. Well, do we do exploitation with like Metasploit now? Because Metasploit's been brand new. HD had just come out with Metasploit, and I was like, this tool is amazing. Like it keeps us from having to build exploits as like ugly Perl files, and like like let's modularize all this, and we get all the access to all these shell codes and things that run directly in memory right after the exploit. And that was cutting edge back then. And so there's always been that kind of like, if you know where to look, it's there. But you got to know where to look. Now there's more access than ever, though. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a fascinating time, and something that you brought up that I really relate to is, you kind of like going and bugging the devs at your current company, right?
yeah.
Like saying like, "Hey, we're doing all this stuff wrong." Like that's exactly what I did. So
That's awesome.
how I got started, right? Like I guess I'm very persistent.
Mhm.
Um I'm sure I piss off a lot of people. I'm sure I will piss off a whole lot more.
Not
But until
everybody's
you
gonna
tell
love
me
you.
no, I'm asking, right?
Mhm.
And when I was getting started, I was in help desk, and it was like for this E911 application, and I like kind of forced my way into all of the government and military contracts because I thought for sure I'm going to go federal law enforcement. I'm going to leave this stupid help desk career behind, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and so like with having those clients, they're very security focused.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like you step on campus, you know, and they're hacking your stuff right in front of you, and they're like, "Well, how in the world do you have this configured like this?" And I'm, you know, this young kid, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm literally reading books on security the night before I'm
Yeah.
going to this
Yeah.
place. Um, you know, so I would take that and I would come back to the devs and I'd be like, "Hey, like we have these 50 things
Yeah.
that we need to resolve and we have 2 weeks to do it because my flight's already booked to go back, and if I don't show progress, like considerable progress, they're just going to cancel the contract. Like there's
That's
no in
crazy.
between on this, you know."
Yep.
And coaching the devs through like, "Hey, when I start up SE Linux on this server, everything breaks and you
Yeah.
told me that it was supposed to be fine."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, well, we don't know how to fix it," you know? And then that's me going back and saying like, "Okay, well, you have to run these 30 commands to get it to work
Yep.
because SE Linux, you know, blocks everything by default."
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think there's it's one of the things that like when I mentor kind of like I don't take a lot of mentees on or stuff like that, but the ones I do, there is a lot of them who come pre or post hack the box and like, all these training platforms. And so they know how to use the tools, they know the vulnerability classes, whether that's web or internal or mobile or whatever, right? But the thing that they don't get that I got, which was really useful and it sucked, but was this period of time where nobody knew shit and you just had to figure it out yourself. And sometimes fake your way through it. Like I remember
Yeah.
being on a couple of assignments. I don't know if you had any of these, but I remember getting assigned on a couple of tests where it was like the salesperson sold one thing, and then you get there and it's a
Oh.
completely different type of test. Like one of our guys sold a wireless assessment one time, and I was like, sweet, I know how to do a wireless assessment. I have my alpha, UG card and I'm ready to go with Kali Linux. And I get there and it's point to point wireless between two banks on the same street that are branches of each other. And I'm like, oh, this is not a traditional Wi-Fi test. And so, I have a week there. I'm on client site, which doesn't happen a lot anymore either. And so like I'm having to dance my way through talking to the client and being like, yeah, this isn't exactly what I expected, but we can make it work. Right. And then going home the night of being an IRC and like overnighting books from Amazon on like point to point wireless connections, like what protocol they're using, like what is this cipher strength of, whatever, like, and then like trying to cobble together a methodology to complete the assignment. And, my mentees come and they're like, and, I know all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't have to go through this pain of having to figure it out. And sometimes that's the job. Sometimes the job is tap dancing and figuring things out as you go and learning a completely new technology in 24 hours and staying up all night on Monster and just like try to do your best. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I man, I totally relate. That that happens so many times. I think my first like federal client, the salesperson who I don't even think worked at the company anymore at the time, sold them something that we literally didn't even have a product for.
Oh yeah, it
Like
happens all the
he
time.
sold
Yep.
a totally different product. And when the client like brought it up to, you know, my VP of product, they were like, "Hey, we want this like very specific, you know, feature."
Yeah.
And it was denied because internally we didn't really understand why they wanted it. Right. So I show up on site and they're like, "Hey, like what about this product?" You know, like we're giving you time, but we want the product.
Yeah.
And I had to like figure out, you know, from them, like, you know, why do you want it? Why is it important to you? What's the
Mhm.
situation that you're trying to solve for?
Yeah.
And, you know, sure enough, like it was a very good reason for wanting it. You know, they had experienced an active shooter incident,
Ooh,
which is insane on
that's insane. Yeah. Yeah.
a federal campus. You know, like it's a very large environment. It's large enough to where they have their own police force, their own fire department. Like they have their own first responders there, and they had an active shooter incident, and they had no clue where the guy was. They
Mm.
just knew that it happened, and they have hundreds of acres of
Yeah,
land right in the middle
and
of
a ton of
nowhere.
different type of signals everywhere too that they have to
Yeah,
analyze. Yeah,
yeah, and so like they threw the campus completely on lockdown, and people were calling, 911 and everything, and they still couldn't figure out where people were because people were calling in the room with the shooter, and people can't say anything because the shooter's in the room.
yeah,
Well, like, their specific use case was, how do we figure out someone's location if they can't talk, but they called in,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so, the sales guy sold it that we can do it. He was a little bit
ooh,
futuristic
yeah,
thinking,
yeah,
because the technology didn't quite exist there.
yeah,
But when I was able to understand it and I relay it back, then the VP's like, "Oh, we actually never thought of that use case before."
yeah,
And like I described the building to him. I was like, look, when I walk into this building, there are thousands of cubes. Like I'm only
mhm,
allowed in one section. There's four other giant sections just as big. I mean, it takes me 5 minutes to walk from one end of the cube aisle to the other end. And that's
yeah,
me walking fast. Like,
yeah,
I was like, they need to know exactly where this person is, and he's like,
yeah,
oh, I get it now.
yeah, yeah. It's I mean, I think there's still a little bit of opportunity to learn these days, but I feel like there was that added pressure of being on client site too a lot more. I think that
Oh yeah.
consulting has changed a lot, where even internals these days, and even us at our consultancy, we send a little mini PC, right? And it's, it has a VPN connect, open VPN in it, and reverse tunneling. And so we mail that to the client, and they drop it in a cubicle somewhere with a network jack, and then we work our internal from there because it's expensive to buy plane tickets and it's expensive to host per diem and stuff like that. But I grew up when that wasn't really a thing. There wasn't a ton of consultancies that had jump boxes like that, and so it was on planes. It was is trying to keep pressure under fire. So one of our biggest ones was my friend Sasha worked at Exxon, and so at HP we had a contract with Exxon. So at that point, it was the Fortune one, in the world, and we're talking about like post Valdez as well, where they had built this security culture that was like super hardcore. So we, so like we go and we're doing this consulting engagement, and I'm really good friends with Sasha now. We've been really good friends ever since this. But we go and I get there, and Sasha, this guy, he is the head of the security org at that point. Um, and we get there with our laptops, and we're chilling, and we're about to get started testing, and he walks in and he's like, "What are you guys doing?" We're like, "Oh, we're setting up our equipment, like our laptops to do the." We had like an internal and then an internal web app as well, and so he's like, "You can't use those laptops." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "They're not corporate approved. Like, you can't use those laptops. You have to use our laptops." And I was like, "Okay, well, we'll figure it out, right?" Like, okay, so how long? He's like, "Well, it's gonna take us a couple days for us to get you laptops requisitioned." And we're there for 2 weeks, I think, on site. And so, first of all, the first tap dance I have to do is like, okay, what am I going to do with these 2 days? I'm just going to sit here and twiddle my thumbs. It's like, no, it's like I sit with my team and I'm like, okay, we're gonna walk through with Sasha, like verbally with our notebooks, and ask a whole bunch of architectural questions that will help us when we do get the laptops and start testing, right? So that was like the first tap dance we had to do. And then the second tap dance is like you get the laptops and they're totally locked down. Like host. I mean, there wasn't really at that point something like Cloudflare, or, some endpoint protection as advanced, but at that time they were super locked down. We couldn't install any tools. Like we couldn't install Burp Suite. We couldn't install like any command line based Linux tools that we wanted to. Everything was locked down. And so, I go to Sasha and I'm like, "Hey man, like, these are usually the things that we need to do a web test and an internal, right? Like, there's a vulnerability scanning portion, which we have our own tool for this, and that needs to be installed. We have Burp Suite, which is for manual web pen testing, all these other things, Nmap for port scanning." And he's like, "Yeah, like it's going to take months for us to get those tools to go through whitelisting." And it's like, okay, well, that's unfortunate. I'm like, well, I can just like, is it a problem of policy? Is it a problem that you just don't think we're going to be able to get them on the laptop? And he's like, and he tongue in cheek, he's like, hey, if you can get them on the laptop, you can use it, but you're not going to be able to get them on the laptop. And so I pull out my USB key and I boot from, a bootable Kali Linux distro off my USB key, and I root the machine, disable the host base intrusion prevention software, and then start installing my tools as my new user account on root, basically. And then once I have root bootable Linux distro, I can go into the file system, change the stuff in the Windows file system so that I have an account that's administrator access to install the Windows tools there too. And after that, Sasha didn't give us any shit. He was like, okay, these guys are legit. They know what they're doing. Like, but these are the types of things that, you can't crumble under. And there's a lot of stress that goes on in a situation, especially when they're the client and you're the person coming into their organization and stuff like that. And so, I don't know if you get that anymore. So yeah.
No, not that much anymore. Did you ever run into a situation where like, you did a pen test and then you're getting arrested and going through that whole thing? Like you always hear about these like horror stories where
So
like the CTO forgets that he signed something 2 months ago, or whatever.
yeah, I didn't ever have any trouble with the law. So I did a bunch of red teaming, which included physicals at my first gig. And that was mostly for banks. And they would put me all the grunt work stuff, but I never got arrested for any of it. So a lot of what I did was crawl space, climbing when I was more fit, uh, and um, and dumpster diving behind banks and pulling out trash. I was the guy that, I was the low man on the totem pole at that point at my first job, and so it didn't matter if it was sunshine or raining. I'm diving through that dumpster. And then our big one back then was, most banks had shred bins, and so we had shred bin company shirts, and we would go in and just walk out with the shred bin if they didn't have it chained to something. And
Huh.
so we would just go steal the shred bin and put it in the back of our car or whatever, or a truck or whatever we were using. And so those are the those are the closest like kind of like red teamy things I got early in my career. And then later on, when I did more red teaming later, our services didn't include physical a ton, right? I mean, the closest we got there was USB key drops. So, using duckies and stuff like that look like USB keys but are actually HID devices, putting shells on them and then delivering them through the parking lot, like dropping them in the parking lot of the organization and stuff like that. But I did a whole bunch of physical, had a couple of falls through ceilings, and I gave up on that. And then we also did social as part of our red teaming as well. And I remember doing an engagement on a social where someone got fired. And I didn't want to be a part of that anymore. So I stopped doing some of those services and just focused on the hacking parts of it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's dicey
Yeah.
when someone gets fired because you were hired to do something, and you just
Mhm.
did it really well. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's unfortunate. I used to work for a company that they took like phishing tests extremely serious, and if you
Mhm.
failed 3 in a row, like you were
Yeah.
fired.
Yeah. Yeah. That was this one. It was one though. It was literally, we did their first phishing assessment, and we were ahead of the time. We had our own phishing platform with their own pixel based tracking, which was
Huh.
pretty advanced for the time. And this woman failed the phishing test and put in creds, and she got fired or laid off. I don't know which one, but she was no longer at the company, and I just didn't want to be responsible for that, like,
Yeah.
going forward. So leave it to other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I worked for a credit bureau at one point, and I wasn't, like, on the offensive side,
Yeah.
um, and they did a phishing test. I think I might have started there, like, around this time, right? Like,
Mhm.
maybe, like, December 1st or something that year, and, a week later, the phishing test is, "Oh, like, log in for your bonus information," or whatever it is like that, right?
Yeah.
It's literally bonus season.
Yeah.
Everyone's waiting for their bonus to be
Yeah.
to be posted, you know, and they like have this portal, looks exactly like the portal that you would expect.
Mhm.
You put in your creds, and you know, something like 85% of the company failed.
Yeah.
And like everyone complained to the CISO, was like, what the hell? Like, this is completely like unfair. Like, this is difficult beyond belief, because even the cert was signed. Like, it
Yeah.
was like, it's like, okay, like, I understand you want to make the phishing test as hard as possible because the attackers aren't gonna, you know, give you that break, right?
Mhm.
But like, you were kind of using inside resources to do things to make it look proper and everything like that, which, yes, like, attackers are gonna try and do that if they can, but like, come on, you know?
Yeah, it's, I mean, those are so hard because it's like you said, that is the kind of stuff that a nation state type of adversary will do, right? They
Yeah.
will clone some shit that looks exactly like yours, and but but yeah, those are that was usually one of the ones that was off limits. Was in most of our socials was bonuses or anything to do with like pay related stuff was kind of out of scope in most of our engagements, I think, after
Mm.
that. Now, no, it isn't to say that we don't do social anymore. I just don't do it personally. Like I have a guy, Arion, he's a good friend of mine, and he has set up our infrastructure and does all our campaigns. So you know, you absolutely need to do social engineering and modern red teaming. But I don't want to do it personally. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
No, that makes sense.
yeah.
So what made you go down the path of starting your own company and doing this yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd always worked for other people like most, you know, like most people, and I was pretty happy in that like senior director level position of offensive security, and then I left. I left offensive security for 3.5 years to do the CISO role at Ubisoft, the video game company. So
Oh, wow.
Assassin's Creed, Just Dance, Rainbow Six are some of the big flagship games we made there, and they were looking for a security leader who had a lot of offensive security experience that would retrofit kind of their existing security um, program. So I went there for 3.5 years and did that, and I realized that the big CISO role wasn't for me. I mean, if I'm gonna be honest, it was the wrong kind of stress for my life. I also had 3 kids at the time, and that job requires you to be married to your, you know, your desk basically. And so I did it for 3.5 years, and I decided to step back, and I had to decide at that point what I was going to do. And a buddy of mine was he was running a consulting company, but a smaller one, and he was like, well, if you just want to come and lead our testing arm, you know, get back into offensive security and red teaming, you know, do it here because we've worked together. And I was like, okay. So I go back for a year and just kind of get my bearings again on what was going on. And while I worked there, you know, like I had been working on this class for a long time. So the last, I would say, 10 years of my life, I've been really into bug bounty in my free time. And so, you know, I'd done a lot of bug bounty. I had worked for BugCrowd, the bug bounty platform, and I had worked there before I went to Ubisoft, and I had been the head of triage, and I had been testing that whole time. And so I had built this course over the years. It started off as a conference talk called the Bug Hunters Methodology, and I presented it at DEF CON, and it got a really great feedback. And so I kept iterating on this talk. It started off as a talk, and then it got too big to be a talk. It turned into a workshop, and then it got too big to be a workshop. And I was like, what do I do with this? And it's basically all of the tools and techniques that modern hackers are using in the web space and for reconnaissance as well. So it's like recon and web hacking, like intermediate to advanced. Um, and it was stuff that I saw the bug bounty community was doing that normal pen testers, web pen testers weren't doing. They weren't focusing heavy client side. They weren't looking for certain server side vulns. Like there was an education gap between there. And so when it turned into past the workshop size, I gave it a couple times at OWASP as a course, a 1 day course, and it went really well. And people loved it. And so we came back. I came back from one of those down, you know, down over the years. And I asked my wife, I said, you know, we were just talking about what I was going to do next. And she was like, well, running the numbers, if you scaled this up, you could just teach this course if you wanted to. And, you know, it seems like people like it. It really looks like you enjoy making it. You know, maybe it's time. that we did our own thing. And so it was a combination of my wife, Julia, and my best friend, Daniel Miesler, pushing me to build the company. And so it started off, we just offered one course. It was the Bug Hunters methodology. It's a 2-day intensive intermediate to advanced reconnaissance and web hacking course. And that went really well. And then we built a second course when AI got really hot, and we hit just the right timing. And so we did a course on how to assess AI systems, and then we do a course on how to use AI as a security practitioner. So we have 2 AI courses now, and then we do these courses, and companies would be like, "That was amazing. Come do our pen test. Come do our AI assessment. Come do whatever." And so then we had to build out the consulting arm of the company, and so that's what we are now. We're about 50% consulting, 50% training. Now we have 6 classes with some guest instructors too. We have the number one. We have an expansion coming up to the Bug Hunters methodology with the number one hacker on BugCrowd right now, who's doing it because he's a specialist in broken access control and stuff like that. So he's coming on and being a guest instructor and building a course. We launched an advanced client side course. So yeah, everything's been going good. But yeah, that was kind of the impetus. It was just like my wife and Dan pushing me to do it, and so we just did it. It was easier than, I mean, to get it started, it was easier than I thought it was going to be. I was always kind of afraid of it, but then the realities of owning your own business are always that you're working all the time too. So because you're working for yourself, so there's ups and downs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had on Chris Roberts. Man, I think the last time I had him on was maybe last summer or the summer before.
Hmm.
And he, I've had him on several times. The first couple times he was still running his consultancy. And I mean, he just looked like he was just in the worst mood possible. Like I felt bad for him being on the podcast. Like I was like, you want to reschedule, like
Yeah.
and then the last time I had him on, he had already like gotten out of it and found like a real job and whatnot. And
Yeah.
he looked so much different. He was like happy to be there. I was like, man, that's good because I thought it was me. Like I
It's not for everybody, honestly. And in fact, I just got a job offer today. Someone was like, come work for us and stop doing your own thing. And I was like, nah, I enjoy it too much. So I really enjoy the teaching part, and the consulting part also. I enjoy a lot of aspects about it as well. So I think this is perfect for me for right now. It's a lot of work, but then when you do a good job, like you have clients that really enjoy the training or in the consulting, and you give value, it's more personally fulfilling, I guess, than doing it through another place. All the stresses that come with running the business are, those are things that we're learning to kind of hire or scale or delegate, and as long as I can remind myself to do that, I think it's going to be fine. Because I love having our own brand. I love doing what I want to do. I have an idea for a course tomorrow. I can implement it, and start researching, and that's my vibe. I love research. I love training. I love building things that are cutting edge. And so, yeah, that's, like you don't get that opportunity at every place you go when you work for someone else. So, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel like because right now, like I'm getting my PhD. Well, once I'm done with that next December, hopefully, like I'm probably going to take a year off. Not do anything because this
yep.
is like 10 times harder than I ever thought it would be.
I bet. I bet.
Um,
Yeah,
but like once I'm done with the time off, I'm probably going to go like pretty hard into the offensive side,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
that's like the area that I haven't touched that much on. But I've always been so close to it. It's like, yeah, I know the command to run. You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah,
like I know the command to run, but have I like actually run it?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
that sort of thing. So
yeah,
it'll be really interesting because then I'll go into like a research for my own fun mode. Like kind of how I was
yeah.
in the beginning,
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. I mean, there's so much stuff these days.
especially with AI.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, especially with AI stuff. But I mean, there's I tell a lot of people who are just getting started, a lot of young people who are in college, not in like a PhD program, because I feel like you get a little bit more specialized there, but people who are coming in and they're like, oh yeah, I'm doing a cybersecurity major or something like that, or something related, and I'm like, oh, like what do you want to do in security? And they're like, I want to do cybersecurity, and they're like, I'm like, no, what do you mean? Like, what do you want to do? Like, there's inside of cybersecurity, there's something like 65 or 70 different individual specific things you can do.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that." And I'm like, "Okay, well, here's the blue team side, here's the red team side, here's like the engineering side, here's the leadership side, here's the compliance side." Like there's all these places you could go work. And really their only exposure to security in their major has been like maybe half of an offensive security course, which just taught like nmap and vulnerability scanning, maybe some forensics, maybe some security project management like stuff, but sometimes not even that. And it's like you gotta, like, these days there's so much stuff that you can specialize in that um it's hard. It's a lot of stuff for a lot of places are looking for not just specialists too. They want a generalist who can do a lot of things too. So you have to be multi-talented. It's a crazy industry now.
Yeah. It's a really competitive space for sure because there's so many people that want to get into it, and then there's so many people that already have, the experience that might be trying to
Yeah.
make a pivot within security even or whatnot.
Yeah.
That's actually why I like. So I got my master's at the same place I'm getting my PhD from,
Okay.
and the master's was extremely hands-on. So
Oh,
like
that's awesome.
literally one class you're doing the blue team where you're securing a network,
Yeah.
like to the max, and they give you like specific requirements. Like, look, this web app has to talk out. Like, it can't be completely locked down. You can't
Yeah.
shut off the servers, that sort of stuff. And then the next class, you're literally hacking into that blue team network that the other blue team class, set up and whatnot, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you're getting both sides of it. And for forensics, they had on someone from like the FBI that
Yeah.
now worked for Symantec. That all that they do is forensics, like,
Yeah.
so you're learning NCase and FTK suite and
Yep.
all that stuff. It was fantastic. Like,
That's awesome. You don't see
that's what I
that.
wanted.
Yeah, that you don't see that everywhere, honestly. I feel like colleges are catching up to making more hands-on programs, and then you have like competitions like the what is the NC, or the it's like the National Cyber Defense something, but it's the one where like they have the Joes versus Pros thing where it's like
Oh yeah.
Mubix from Hack 5 will come, at the nationals, and he'll play the red teamer, and then the students have to be the blue teamers, like under certain constraints. And you have like industry known pen testers who are like trying to break into your stuff. And so I feel like there's more of that than ever. So that's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your perspective on AI and LLMs? Because, so to me, I'm a bit of a pessimist when it comes to AI.
Hmm.
Probably because I haven't seen anything that just like blew me away. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but you having a bot that can schedule my travel,
Hmm.
cool. It's not something that's insane, right? Um, Me going into an LLM and typing in a question, it gives me a response. It's just the third iteration or whatever of the Google search engine, basically.
Right. Right.
Um, but like everyone seems to be going down this AI LLM route. I was literally on a call, actually all of my calls today was talking to customers about AI security, LLM security. They're still mixing up AI and LLM. They think they're deploying AI when it's an LLM, and all this stuff, right? So what's your perspective on it? Because it's not as secure as everyone is making it out to be.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think there's two sides of that coin, right? Is how secure is the technology inherently, and then how secure is it how we're implementing it, and then there's also how useful is it for us in our day to day, and especially as security people. And so um I guess I'll address the second one first. And so I have long had my pen testing methodology that I have designed, for myself and for my consultancies that I've run, and or my teams that I've worked with and stuff like that. And um it's hard won knowledge over years of experience to build that methodology, and there's parts of it that are completely manual. um and so with AI, I've been able to take a lot of those manual pieces and now add some automation to them, which has been really cool. um there's also things that it does really great, like pattern matching and analysis. Like, the last bot we built in the last class is a JavaScript analysis bot. And so, in modern pen testing and modern bug bounty hunting, there is this gap of knowledge. There's like pen testers who were trained in the previous generation who are used to server side bugs like SQL injection, LFI, all that kind of stuff. And over the graduation of having all these JavaScript frameworks on the web now, a lot of cross-site scripting is based upon chaining together different primitives inside of JavaScript, that's client side, in order to build a cross-site scripting payload or execute an SSRF or something like that on the website. And so there is a whole bunch of pen testers who are still kind of in that like previous generation of training, whether they got it from SANS or wherever, um, and so JavaScript analysis means that you have to be an expert in JavaScript. And means that you have to take this pseudo obfuscated code, minified code, or sometimes actually obfuscated code, and debug it and find out where all of these gadgets are in order to exploit bugs that are relevant to today. And so we built an AI bot in like 2 days in the course that could analyze large chunks of JavaScript. We built a Chrome extension that didn't exist before to do it straight out of your browser. So you could land on a website, click a button, it will slurp up all of the inline JavaScript, all of the explicit JavaScript files, and then run a whole bunch of security analysis on them. And so I have seen a lot of what I would call augmentation, and I've seen some automation, but it's not like it's automating everything I do. It's still an enabler, it's still a tool, and I have to figure out a way to use it. It's definitely a very sharp sword in my arsenal, but it's not like the only thing that we're doing. And most of our pen tests end up being, manual, and then the AI helps us with like 20% or 30% of it, right? Which is almost like any other tool. You could have said that around about Burp Suite, about Nessus. You could have said, it's augmenting us in the same way. So I see it in the same way as I see those tools right now. In the future, do I think it's going to take over more? Uh, Probably, I would say so. I think that people are learning how to do a lot of AI engineering, and specifically, yes, it's LLMs, right? But yeah, AI engineering that can automate even more fancy things. You have companies like Expo and some other places that can do a complete web test, and they have gone to like a second or third level where they're not just context engineering or prompt engineering LLMs. They actually have their own models, right? And they have their own scaffolding and tools and stuff like that. So I am pretty pro AI, I think. I think that, and I also don't think it's going to replace everyone either in offensive security. On the other side, of the coin, the systems that everybody is rushing to implement is crazy. It is. I mean, we do one of our biggest services right now, and it has been our biggest service for the last year in the consulting side, is doing AI pen tests, is what we call them, and some of the bugs are so dumb. They're just like, it's crazy. It's like, oh, we hooked up an LLM and we also hooked it up to an agent that, you know, uh, pulls all of our Salesforce data and our CMDB data and our ticket data from Confluence and Jira and our, wiki pages to make it smarter. And I'm like, okay, well, what model architecture did you use? And they're like, oh, we just use, OpenAI's architecture, from thing. And I'm like, okay, so you're giving all your security data to OpenAI?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what they're doing. And it's like, okay, well, we should rethink this a little bit. And then, when it comes down to like, okay, well, maybe they need their own model or something like that. They need engineers to build those systems internally, in order to implement them and host them internally and put up the front end and the back end and all of the ops that go into building an effective ecosystem for all that stuff. So, we had we had an instance of a test where they built a chat interface for a web app, and so it was multiple users could use this chat interface, and they were logging all the chat logs to WebSocket streaming. And so if you just opened the developer tools in your browser, you could see everybody else's conversations streaming back. It was pretty nuts. So yeah, we've had some really dumb ones, and then we've had some really advanced ones too. We've had some people who had advanced based systems, and we'd have to like control their agents with fancy prompt injection and stuff like that. So
Huh.
it's all over the place. But uh, I feel like it is a race because of FOMO, I think. A lot of companies get FOMO of their competitors or FOMO of how the industry is moving, and they want to, implement, AI in some way, shape, or form, and they just do it way too fast and to have, like, no security architecture review, or no specialists even to tell them what to do, honestly. So, yeah.
Hmm. I don't understand why my camera just like disconnected.
Oh. Oh, yeah, you're blank, yeah.
That is quite frustrating. This happened last week, but I don't know what even happened with it.